Hey, what's up? My name's Clifton Barry. I'm a clinical massage therapist located in New Orleans. Probably more strictly vegan since 2018. I would say that I've been vegan, vegetarian on and off for, I don't know, a really long time. But in 2018, I went to TrueNorth because I felt my health decline pretty significantly. And a lot of the standard things that you would do by going to see doctors, getting on pharmaceutical drugs, they didn't work. And even in cases where they did work, a lot of the side effects were pretty overwhelming. So I did a bunch of research on fasting and then came across TrueNorth and thought that that was probably the best thing for me to do to kind of restart where I was. And so in late September of 2018, I went to TrueNorth, and I'm at this one, and I fasted for, I don't know, probably like a week and a half, and refed for about a week and a half. And my health got much better after that. And so,
What were you dealing with specifically?
so my case was kind of weird in that it was really hard for me to figure out exactly what was going on with me. I had a lot of symptoms, which were like a lot of bloating, a lot of trouble sleeping, a lot of anxiety, weight gain, my complexion was really off. And so, yeah, I was just in a really poor state of like mental and physical health. And nothing really, no blood test or anything really showed that there was any issue. All my blood work came back like I was an Olympian or something. Like it came back really, really good. And so that actually made things more frustrating because when you go to doctors and you're like, hey man, like I'm having all of these symptoms and they don't find anything through like the most basic, blood panel or whatever, then they look at you like I don't know what I'm talking about. It's all in my head. And I'm like, look, it's not all in my head. Like I haven't slept a good night's sleep or even anything resembling a good night's sleep in a year or years. So it becomes really sad and really frustrating because you're doing the best that you can and you're probably not being taken very seriously because they can't figure out what's going on with you.
Now, who are you?
I'm Danielle and I'm an attorney in Portland, Oregon. My vegan story is interesting in that my grandparents were a part of the American Natural Hygiene Society. Pretty much, oh my gosh, in the 40s, I want to say, 40s, 50s. And so when I was born, I was kind of born into it. Now, there's a generation gap because my mother was not. She rebelled. She grew up in it, she rebelled. But I went to the hygiene conventions with my grandparents every summer. And as I got older, I started actually participating and listening to the lectures and hearing what the doctors were saying and realizing there's a lot of people here in their 80s and 90s who are running around without medication, who are playing 2 hours of tennis every day, no coffee, tons of energy, just eating this way. So I want to say at 15, 16, I started doing it on my own. And it was a lot of ups and downs. I was like doing vegan or whole food plant-based in a house where my mother obviously wasn't very supportive. My grandparents or my mother wasn't, and then friends weren't. So I was in and out, and I always returned to it. But definitely as far as being more consistent and religious, probably 2018, maybe even before that. I've gone raw for a couple months here and there and vegan, but I've been definitely consistently whole food plant-based since I met Cliff and went to TrueNorth also in 2018. And it was my 40th birthday that year, and I just felt like I actually had come to the conference, the health conference, the year before, and I heard Dr. Goldhammer speak, and I've known Dr. Goldhammer my entire life and heard him speak, and I've heard about TrueNorth, but I had never gone and fasted on my own. And I wanted to just try that experience. And so for my 40th birthday, I decided I was going to go in September. And I did a 10-day fast and then refed for 5 days. And it was life-changing. It was not only physically life-changing, emotionally life-changing. I just emerged as a different person. And after that, I was very, 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 very strict and religious about my food. And it's gone a little bit up and down as far as the SOS part, but mostly whole food, plant-based since then. Or I met this guy too.
It sounds like your diet's kind of gone other directions throughout the years. Do you feel like something significant right now is different than previous approaches when you were vegan? Like, are you doing something totally different now that's making it better? Or was it kind of the same at one point previously when you didn't? Because you didn't stick with it. Was it mostly family, friends? What made you veer away from it?
Yeah, family. So I was married to a Greek guy who was a meat eater, and not just, I mean, that whole family, like the big fat Greek wedding is like, what do you mean you don't eat meat? You know, it's just everybody ate meat. And so there were times where I would make vegan food for myself and then, meat food for my now ex-husband and my son. My son is still a meat eater. I can't change that. But so it was really hard making multiple meals, and then being with somebody who liked to go out to steak restaurants, and so I would go too. And so slowly, little by little, I would end up back eating meat again. And it didn't take very long time before it didn't feel good. Not just on my body, it didn't feel good emotionally, mentally. It didn't resonate with who I want to be. And so then I would always come back to my foundation, which has always been natural hygiene. And so I think that the reason why it has been more consistent in my life now is I'm divorced. And so now I can make food for myself, and it's a lot easier, and I don't have to, I'm not as easily influenced by my significant other. I'm now with somebody that eats whole food, plant-based, and so we like to nerd out on vegan food. And
we nerd hard. We nerd hard.
We find really yummy vegan restaurants, and then he's actually a really good cook and makes amazing vegan food, and we have cookbooks and things like that. And so it's a lot easier when you're with somebody that has the same values as you, and I think that's been a real help. And I'm older, right? I mean, it's easier as you get older, you start realizing what you put in your body really does have effect on your health, your energy levels. So
You got to go to TrueNorth. It's where whole food, plant-based lovers meet.
The gold hammer plug.
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen both sides of the equation in a very unique way, it sounds like. Let me get this straight. You were raised vegan or vegetarian?
So my grandparents, who did a lot of raising of me, my mom worked, and so I was with my grandparents a lot. They were, I want to say, predominantly raw. So back then, when I was growing up, when I came to the health conferences, it was a lot of raw food. There wasn't a beautiful buffet of all these different varieties of food. It's a lot of fruits and vegetables, mostly raw. And then I want to say it was like there was a banquet that we got baby steamed potatoes, and that was a treat. So that's really how my grandparents ate predominantly. So when I was with them, I mostly ate that way. But my mother, she just entirely rebelled. And so I ate just a standard American diet with my mom. And so I had a mix. And I mean, as a kid growing up, you don't really think about the consequences. Like I said, I used to go with my grandparents to the health conference, and I would spend a lot of, my grandfather used to be in charge of the kids, and he would have a kids program and take the kids, and all the parents would go to lectures. And so as I was growing up, I'd play with the children, but I got to a certain age, I want to say 12, 13, 14. By 15, I started hanging out more with grandma and going to the lectures and listening to what the doctors were saying. So I don't know, there's something there that started clicking for me.
What kind of changes did you notice after going plant-based? I mean, your symptoms went away, right?
They significantly lowered, that's for sure. Like enough to where, I was really happy with the outcome. One of the real things that I enjoyed about it was just kind of the vanity, to be honest with you. Like I found that my body had just historically, since I was a little kid, been kind of sensitive. I mean, maybe when I was younger, not as much, but had just been sensitive to a lot of things. If I ate dairy, I noticed that my sinuses got really jacked up like immediately and really inflamed. If I ate meat, then my stomach just was bloated and uncomfortable. A lot of vegans have a tendency to go to like really processed carbs, right? You might go towards pastas, you might go towards breads, because it does give you that like full feeling that you got when you ate meat and cheese and stuff like that. So like I had just kind of noticed that everything that I was eating seemed to have like this really weird effect on me. And when I went whole food plant-based with like rice and beans and lots of vegetables and fruit and just got creative with that like any awkward weight that like my body was carrying just didn't seem to like stay. So like my body composition seemed to like be really healthy, and I didn't feel bloated and stuff like that. So, I mean, that was huge right there, because I think I had tried every sort of diet in my adult life, and all the stuff that was supposedly like the right diet for lifting weights or the right diet for this, and they all had some like negative outcome to it in one way or another.
Have you been doing this one the longest, or?
I would say, no, I would say that I ate like an unhealthy standard New Orleans diet like most of my life, really. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't eat healthy like many days, but yeah, I ate fried shrimp po' boys and I ate like steak and I ate all of that stuff. But I would say consistently, this will be the foundation of my diet, I would imagine, forever. I don't look at this as an identity though. I see for a lot of people, this is an identity. You know, they wear the T-shirts and you know, it's like their jam. And I just look at it as just something that I do. You know, if I wanted to eat a donut, like that's my business. I just don't really do it, right? And like I eat predominantly whole food plant-based because I feel better, my body operates better. I don't know, that's just kind of my thing.
Has this become ethical at all, or has it always just been just food to you?
Mostly food health. What I've seen just coming to the conference since I was a child is these people of all ages with tons of energy, especially in their 70s and 80s and 90s, who are athletic, who are not on medications. And then you go out into the real world and people are in their 60s, 70s, 80s on multiple medications and really suffering. In fact, my mom's 63 now, and she had a stroke a couple of years ago, and she still doesn't eat this way. In fact, actually, I was just talking to Wanda about this, where I was like, "What are you doing? You know better. You know, you grew up with this. You know what to eat. Why do you continue on this way?" But I mean, you can't change somebody's mind. So it's always been the food. But what's interesting is that when I was saying I was 15 and started going to lectures, my grandmother, I remember one of the things that really caught me was they were showing how cows were killed. It was a video that somebody was presenting on how poorly the animals were treated, how they're kept in these cages and confined, and then they're led to slaughter, and they showed how inhumane not only they were treated, but even in their end, how they were just really just murdered. And then here we are eating them. And as a 15-year-old, that really resonated with me. But then it does go back to so much of what we eat, we take on. You know, and so when you eat animals that have been treated that way, you're taking on, you know, their energy in a sense, and their illnesses and their toxicities in your body. And so, yeah, it's been mostly food. But I just remember for some reason that video when I was 15 really, I think that just snapped me out of, you know, the fog I was in. And yeah.
What about you? Is it going to be ethical at all?
It's indirectly ethical. One of the weird things that I've like learned over time is that it's called like the Einsteinian method. And so a lot of scientists use this method where they might like repeat a question in their mind, and then they either like take a cat nap or they like go to sleep on it. And when you're dreaming, your subconscious mind will show you a different perspective on how to look at it. And Einstein did it often. He did it like in the middle of the day if he was working on some sort of problem that he couldn't really figure out, and his dream would show him a different way of looking at it, and then he would wake up and be like, "Oh, I figured it out." And so when I was dealing with all of these dietary issues and I could not find the right diet for me, I had this really in-depth dream where I was being shown not only the scientific reasons why my body didn't work well with meat, but also the spiritual significance of why meat is not good for anybody. And I'm not gonna like go and explain the dream because it was horrific, but it was like, it showed it. And I had multiple reoccurring dreams that would point me in that direction. And it was really weird because I don't really feel, I love dogs, I love cat, I love animals, but I don't really have that really strong pull towards like the ethical treatment of animals necessarily. But in every subconscious like dream I had, it absolutely seemed to believe that that was a big proponent of why I should not eat this. So I don't really like talk to people about it necessarily, but what I do bring up to people is when I hear them argue why meat is a necessity. And one of the things that I like to bring up is that when they describe meat, they're thinking of maybe these positive things about it, maybe calorically or the protein amount, but they're not talking about the amount of antibiotics that's in the meat, how horrendous it is in all of these different areas, right? How it's treating the environment, or how those antibiotics, once they're in the system, how they destroy the gut lining, so there's so many factors. And I think once you explain to meat eaters that, they have a tendency to reevaluate how they see it a little bit. And that's kind of the only argument that I have.
So do you identify with being vegan or plant-based?
I don't really try to identify with it much.
And when you're describing it?
You know, it's one thing to explain like your story and why you did it in a non-judgmental way, and that can really have people maybe reevaluate like how they're eating or whatever. But that's never my desire to move somebody over. But I'm here for you if you want to make those changes, and people do. Especially if you're not trying to like pull them in. But when they identify as vegan or they identify as plant-based and they're really trying to trying to coerce people in their reality, it can be off-putting. And I've even come across vegans and plant-based people that do the same thing as me, but they just have a different perspective of how they do it. And I kind of find it off-putting. So I'm just a dude. I eat this way and I'll talk to you about it.
What about you? Do you identify with being vegan at all?
No.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was like, I'm an attorney, and a lot of my attorney friends, that is their identity. When people ask like, what do you do? As if like that is all I do. And it's like, well, I'm a mom and vegan, and I have I like to exercise. There's a lot. I'm not just an attorney. It's not my sole identity. Similarly, it's like I eat whole food, plant-based. I enjoy it. Like I said, we totally nerd out on eating this way, but it's definitely not like a who am I type of thing.
There's also very significant reasons to be vegan, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
People's delivery is huge. Yeah. Like, here's the deal. I'm going to eat this awesome meal with you, and it's predominantly made out of plants. And we can talk and we can tell our story, and I can share my information with people, and I can do whatever. I think if anybody is so passionate about it that they've created like a lifestyle or a business, or they want to communicate, you have every right to do that.
You're almost like sneaky about it, like you're not loud about it, and then maybe it's more approachable.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I have found like that over time, when people say like, hey man, like, as I've gotten older, I've actually gotten like thinner. And they're like, hey, how is that? And be like, well, I don't really eat like this, that, and whatever. And I'm just honest. I just say like, well, I had all of these issues, and then like this was one of the methods that I used to like fix these issues, and it worked. And then they're like, the proof is in the pudding, right? So then people are like, oh, okay, well, I want to like lose some weight, or I want to like feel better or whatever.
Yeah.
And so.
And that's cool. And they might not want to become this vegan. They might just want to keep being who they are, but be healthier.
They have no desire for the tribe. They have no desire for the cult. It's just something that makes them and their wife and their family feel better. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. How do you feel when you see other people eat animals? It doesn't bother you at all?
I actually think it tastes really good. Yeah, I mean, I know it makes people upset, but like I remember like eating fried shrimp po' boys and like steak, and I actually thought that like the chemical reaction that happened in my mouth and everything was it's phenomenal, but there was a cost to it. And as I got older, I weighed that cost, and I said, okay, so that tastes awesome, but like my gut doesn't like it, my like sleep doesn't like it. It's not fun even short term, other than like the chewing process. It's not fun long term. So I don't pretend that I think it's gross. I think it's awful, their life process. I mean, I think that's beyond cruel. And I think that when human beings look back at themselves, because I do believe that we're going to all go plant-based at some point. But when I do think humans look back, they'll be like, wow, can you believe that like they didn't think animals had souls, or they didn't think animals were people, and did you see how they treat them? I mean, worse than I could worse than a lot of things that humans, worse than anything that humans have really done to other humans, right? As of right now, like I just don't waste my energy like worrying about what that person's eating.
Wow. I wish I could be more like you, man, because like I can't be around it. I can't stand the smell. Like like if I go to a family dinner, like I don't even go to family anymore, you know, like because the smell, and then they're all like, "Rrr," you know, and I seen it kill them. I know what it did to the animal. Yeah. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I gotta get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
After a while, I'm like, I want a tribe that's like-minded people, because I'm so not that, you know. I just can't pretend to be indifferent. Maybe it's just because I've been vegan a little longer, maybe, I don't know.
When I was growing up, one of my best friends was a smoker. As he got older, sometimes he would have people like give him, you know, obviously have like the negative comment, like, oh, it stinks or this and that, whatever. And I just tried never to really do that to him. And then one day we talked about it, like just buddies, like no judgment. And I found out that like some of those people that had the negative comments about this addiction that he would just avoid them. Yeah. So like it actually like it hindered his relationship with these people, to where like it didn't make him, I mean, maybe it made him want to stop, but it just made him, he knew that when he was around this person, it made him feel bad. A lot of these addictions that people have, they're emotional addictions. And that's the problem that we have, like with, you know, compulsive eating, or maybe constantly eating unhealthy stuff. You might have certain scientists that argue that, but they're wrong. There's a huge emotional component. I've taught myself that this way makes me feel better for whatever stress I've been under, whether it's childhood stress or current stress. And so some people get different influences based on like their family or the culture that they live in, right? And so he picked up smoking for whatever reason. And yeah, he felt awful about it, but instead of like quitting, he would just like avoid these people. And I found that just to be significant, like making them feel bad. Shame, I'm not saying it can't be a motivator, but I think there's better motivators.
You said something that made me think of something somebody else said. It was like a quote. People don't remember the things you say, they remember
how you make them feel. We'll be in a much better place, like politically, socially, if they respect that the human experience is complex. And once we like, you know, understand that like this person's road had influences internally, externally, every day, you know, coming at them in all these different ways that have created the person that you see. And so a lot of the decisions that people make don't make sense to you. But that's not like your business. That's not, you know, unless they're encroaching on you, it's really not your business. And the less you judge them, the more happy you will be and the more happy they will be, right? And the more you help them, the more happy they will be and the more happy you will be. Go to like Latin Europe, right? And they just mow those cigarettes down, right? They eat like meat, they do whatever. They're really happy people, you know? I'm not saying that I condone it, but like if we look at life as simple as like you're gonna avoid eating meat and avoid eating dairy, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be this really happy person, life's a lot deeper than that. Yeah. That's a part of the puzzle. And so I don't think any of this this path for me equals me trying to make other people feel bad.
Right. Now you said something about encroaching.
Yeah.
Like, don't you feel like animal agriculture is encroaching or invasive to other wildlife and potentially the future of this planet? And I mean, when you got 7 billion people, it's going to take tens of billions of animals to feed them. We're worried about the space that we're trying to occupy. How are we going to occupy all that space as we keep growing? It's pretty invasive.
It is, but check this out. Acknowledging progress is a really powerful thing. And so look at all of the numbers, probably globally, but definitely in the Western world, and look at how few people are eating meat in comparison to 5 years ago and 10 years ago. The percentages are like wild in regards to how less meat consumption and how eating, you know, and it's a process that's going to be like, it's going to take place where people, are not going to go whole food, plant-based, SOS free immediately. But like one step is, even if you don't think that it's necessarily healthy, is having people get away from just saying, I need to eat animal tissue, and then say, well, let's try this Beyond sausage. Oh, this is good enough, right? And so we're watching all of these chains say, okay, well, we're going to do like a vegetarian burger as well. And none of that existed like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely 15 years ago.
Like it does now. I mean, it did, but not like it does now.
Right. Not, and so acknowledging that progress is huge. We a lot of times as a, oh man, I'm trying not to be preachy, but as a society, we have a really big problem acknowledging the progress that we make, because we say we need to get here, and it's like, okay, we do need to get here, but look how far we've come. And so you're right, it absolutely, with the population that's growing and the billions of people that we have and the billions more people that we absolutely have animals taking up a massive amount of space, and they're for slaughter and they're for dairy, and that is not cool at all. But each year we're seeing that population be more attracted to consuming less animal products. And that's really big, even if it's processed at the moment. All of it is a process of like getting to a better place. And I think it is going in that direction.
I really appreciate this because I get so many different people with so many different perspectives, and I call the playlist Stories, Insights, and Perspectives. There's so much variety, and everybody has their own approach. You got your hardcore direct action everywhere activists, and you got your people like you, and then people like me in the middle maybe, or whatever, and there's just so much in between and beyond, and I think it takes all approaches, coming from every angle, really.
That's fair, yeah.
So I appreciate your different perspective. Now, just for clarification though, you stay away from all animal.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, if I ate animal stuff, might have been an accident. Yeah. But I definitely don't think I've eaten meat consciously. I mean, maybe if it was snuck in something, but I don't think I've eaten meat as far back as I can remember.
Yeah, and you don't plan on ever eating animals again?
It's not on my radar at the moment. So
if a doctor said you had to eat animals, would you?
Go to a different doctor. Who's going to doctors that tell them they have to eat animals? Come on.
No, I have heard that. I mean, somebody actually said that today. They said the doctor requires they eat this much twice a week.
My understanding, because my family comes from the medical background, is that at most, usually in medical school right now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they get 1 semester of nutrition. So I don't look at your average doctor's view on food and nutrition as being sufficient enough to tell me what I need to do. There are some stud doctors out there who completely focus on nutrition. There's doctors here that do that, but it would really have to be somebody like that.
I like that you went into one of my questions, essentially, do you think we'll ever see a vegan world? And you said, well, you think we're going to progress toward a plant-based world.
I think so.
Yeah.
I just don't, I just think that it's going to be, it's going to be a process that, and that it's already happening. And so it's really, really important for human beings to stop and look at progress,
What about all these other people doing all this keto, carnivore?
Well, I mean, just stay positive, because a lot of doctors right now are even coming out and saying that keto is already showing to not be in any way, it's not working in a long-term manner. So
it's a fad, and there'll be a new one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your body's going to go through ketosis with it, and these people are going to get shredded and probably kind of muscular. It might look great for a little bit, but it's just, I think it's really fat heavy, right? And so I've heard cardiologists who are really objective and indifferent say that whoa, this is not good long term.
Nice. You have a favorite quote you want to share?
Spot with the quote.
On the spot with a quote. You're only as good at healing others as you are at healing yourself.
Could you be with somebody who isn't vegan or plant-based?
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I have. It's a little bit more difficult, but,
Prior to going vegan, did you ever think there's no way I could do this?
No, because I lived in California, so I was born and raised in New Orleans, but lived in California for a decade. When things happen slowly, they can have sometimes just as profound of effect as something really big happening. This was in the early 2000s when being vegan, even in California, was more extreme. So you would have on every menu, right, regardless of whether it's an ethnic or American food, or you would generally have some sort of vegetarian or vegan entree, and usually they were really good. And so I might be sitting with a vegetarian friend and I would try it and it would just be good. And so I remember it just not being an issue, right? You would eat it and be like, man, this just tastes really good. So you would just naturally avoid the meat. And so sometimes I'd catch myself not eating meat for days at a time. And that's when I started to notice the difference. Like my digestive system just seemed to work better. I seemed to feel better. People were like, hey man, you look good. You look like you lost some weight or whatever. And I just like wasn't bloated. So I kind of like just opened up to that. And I was like, and at that time I was even eating dairy. But I was like, maybe meat just doesn't work for me. And so, but that doesn't mean I still didn't eat it from time to time, but it just less. And so like 20 years later, you know what I mean? Like it's just a really natural progression. So I think sometimes that's better because it's not stressing you out. If you have somebody just jump into a diet like this, I mean, it's so stressful that I think it could like undo all the health benefits immediately.
That's a good point. You know, I in the beginning I said, I went vegan in 2011, but in the 90s, early 90s, I cut out red meat. Kind of same reason. It just kind of grossed me out.
Yeah, I was a pescatarian for a while.
Yeah. So I say I was primed up for it in 2011 from over a decade of just kind of already having a growing and increasing predilection toward eating beans and bean burritos and bean burgers and veggie lasagna and anything I enjoyed it more. And then
Sure.
I think you're right. And when people just jump into it, and then
so stressful.
Get
So
overwhelmed
stressful.
easily, especially with the addition of the SOS free, because that really restricts you as far as going out to restaurants, and even if you have a lot of vegan friends and you meet up and you go to their house. So I feel like you definitely, if you do it a little bit more gradually, I mean, it depends. If you have health issues and you need to go to like Goldhammer and fast and dive right in and do that, but I feel like for it to really stick, I think it's easier if you progress into it.
Definitely, yeah. You probably won't have as many transitional issues,
Yeah, I mean, if your cortisol levels are like skyrocketing because you don't know what to eat and like you're always hungry and you don't know how many calories you're supposed to eat, that's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
Right?
What are some of your favorite foods?
Soul food. So I'll take like traditional Southern like food, make it vegan. So that's kind of my.
A lot of oil, salt, and.
The history of soul food, right, is like you had like a lot of Scottish people, right, come into the Southeast, and then you had a large African American population, and they lived on a farm together. So it was just really Southern farm food. And then over time, it became really unhealthy. But historically, right, it was you picked collard greens over here and mustard greens over here, and they ate obviously animal protein, but like a lot of it was corn, a lot of it was all those things. So it was pretty healthy. So I kind of just take that and make, make soul food.
What about you?
I really like salad. Like really big, I think that's my favorite food, is just like a big hearty salad with like beans and lots of different veggies and nuts and seeds, and like if it's a really good hearty full meal salad, it's my go-to.
That's your lunch or your dinner or like?
Yeah, so a lot of times my lunch and dinner will be a really big hearty salad with a microwave potato. I take my just plain baked potato and microwave it at the office, and then sometimes my leftover potato is my dinner with my huge hearty salad. But he makes really good beans, so I like his beans.
Do social media?
I do social media relatively a good bit because I have like a clinical massage therapy company. And then recently I've started getting in the world of like retreats. I absolutely don't mind like healthy like interviews about whole food plant-based eating and stuff like popping up on my Instagram or my Facebook or anything.
So how might they find that?
Facebook, I generally do just personal. Like I have a business page, but my personal page is just like more effective. So my name is Clifton Berry. So you can just look under Facebook under Clifton Berry. You can do the same with Instagram.
If anybody needs any legal services?
I do have a Facebook account, but I'm not a social media person.
Yeah.
But I work for a law firm, Hand Legal, in Portland. So
To close it, any tips on how to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think people do one step at a time, like whatever that means to them. Like whether it's like I'm going to take out dairy, I'm going to eat meat twice a week, whatever it is. And when people look at their health, they shouldn't just look at food. I think that's sometimes like heavily focused on like change your diet. Yeah, you'll see a significant change. It'll change your chemical composition, like how you process things, how you think. I think people should really like start getting into like meditation and breath work and just change how they feel and who they are for the better in like all these different ways. And I think that's kind of the goal. And sometimes that's really missing when people have a really big health issue. So they might say, I'm going to change my diet, and they change it radically. And if they need to do that, that's great. But you should really incorporate like stuff for your mind and meditation and like breath work and stuff like that. And it doesn't need to be extreme. It just needs to like have you feel a lot better about where you are. And
A couple times here recently, people have brought up mindfulness. I've noticed the flip though. A lot of my friends, they don't even mess with diet. They just go straight to exercising. It's like, I'm gonna work off all this. I think that's so scary, like they're still eating the same crap and it's flowing through their veins and they're trying to pump iron.
a lot of people heal themselves in like really, really different ways. And this is a very diet-focused way of healing, and it does have the success for a lot of people, not everybody, but it does have the success for a lot of people to like radically change the path that they're going on. But sometimes like it isn't enough, right? And so there's other doctors who like focus their entire like healing practice on people changing their views about themselves and their place in this world, right? And so like meditating until you feel better, right? Visualizing like that you're healthier and happier. And a lot of people have such a radical change in their health from that alone. And there's other things sometimes on people's healing journey that they need to consider. Meditation, like I said before, like breath work, visualizations, like really shifting like how you see yourself in this reality.
Probably heard of Dr. Dean Ornish, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so he says, eat less, move more, love more, stress less. Of course, he's saying go plant-based, but
Sure.
he's saying do all these other things too. Well, I guess we'll cut it,
Awesome.
and I appreciate your time.
You got it, buddy.